Hello, I'm Recoded Zaphod, and welcome to a redstone video. Alright, so basically I wanted to build this because I wanted to have a clock showing me what time my villagers were working, basically. The times in which they can get assigned workstations or have their trades unlock. So yeah, I designed this. So I wanted it to fulfill a few conditions. One of which is it wouldn't break every time I left the area. So every time it got unloaded, which meant I couldn't just set up, a hopper clock or just a redstone tick which goes round and round, because every time you leave that, you'd come back and it wouldn't be telling the time of the day. It would just be telling you how many ticks it's gone round, which would obviously stop if it became unloaded. So obviously I need to do daylight sensors, because they depend on the daylight and not on a clock ticking away and constantly being loaded. But daylight sensors have their own issues, that they can be affected by weather. So when it rains or thunders, the daylight sensor will put out a lower power level. So to fix that, I set up this system here, so this little bit just over here is effectively a weather independent daylight sensor. So it gives out power levels from this point here, and then you can see them going down this way. At the moment, because it's clear, it's coming from this daylight sensor. But when it's raining, it'll come from this one, and when it's thundering, it'll come from this one. So it does limit how much power you can get out of your daylight sensor, because when it's thundering, it doesn't go all the way to 15. It goes to significantly less. And to make the others match up, so it's the same no matter what the weather, effectively I'm restricting the others by having them further under this, which is blocking skylight. So if you see on here, the skylight is 6, and then on this one it's 9, and on this one it's 11. You can have this at 15, 13, and then 10. But there's a reason that I put it at these, and it's to get the times close to the times that I want it to change at. So basically what happens is, during the day, so after 100 and before, I think is it 2200, might be 2300, but effectively you get the same outputs from a daylight sensor in thunder as you would from a daylight sensor in rain with 2 more shadow on it, or a daylight sensor in clear weather with 5 more shadow on it. And they're effectively the same throughout the day. They do actually change a little towards sunset and during sunrise, and overnight they're all off after a certain point. So yeah, so this is basically the contraption I've created. I will explain how this works now. So the clear weather sensor is one powering it normally, but when I want it to be the rain sensor, so when it's raining, you can detect this with a inverted daylight sensor, and that'll give out a power of 3 when it's raining and 5 when it's thundering. So I just run these into pistons here with a couple of sand on them. They push up, the sand then gets up to this height here. And then that means the power can go through here. And then the same when it's thundering, this pushes up, and so it gets detected through here. The thunder one gets detected directly through there, and then this one will come out at the same power level regardless of the weather. because of that. So if you see at the moment, it's up to here. So if I do /weather rain, see it starts raining, and you might get a brief flicker here, but then you see that comes up and it sets back up to here. So that's during the rain. And then if I set it to thunder, again, you do get a brief flicker where it goes down, where the sensors over there have gone down before they've been activated by this. And I think that's just to do with the order in which things get updated when the weather changes. I think the daylight sensors notice before the inverted daylight sensor. So there's not much you can do about that to sync them, because if you start putting things through repeaters with delays, then they lose the strength of the signal that you're getting. So yeah, it's a slight issue, but it's not horrendously bad. So, okay, so you saw this one just go out. So that means the time has just passed. Hang on, is this open? Okay, this is open. So this is on the early settings, which are these ones here, which means the time query, and I can't spell, daytime, and it will have just passed this value here because it's just gone off. All right, so like I mentioned, I wanted to use this for indicating when the villagers are able to either reset their trades or refresh their profession, which you can do if you haven't traded with them yet by breaking and replacing their workstations, providing they can path to them. So yeah, I was doing some testing over here and checking, and it appears to be, as a lot of people have said, between 2,000 and 9,000 that they're able to do these things. But unfortunately, there's only very specific times which you can actually get a change in the power level of daylight sensors. And although you can get slightly different specific times from having different light levels, you can't actually get exactly 2,000 or exactly 9,000, which is a bit irritating. So what I ended up doing is I've got two versions here. One which will show up slightly after each of the times. So if you want to know that that time has passed by the time the light either comes on or goes off, then you can use this one. Or there's one which comes on just before the times. So this one turns on at 17:57 and goes off at 86:19. And okay, I think because it was about here when I was changing the weather around, this has ended up on the wrong side. I'm just gonna put this back. So if we skip forwards to let's go there. You'll see I'm on the early setting at the moment. So this is what this is for. It's to change. Aha, you see it just clicked on there. And then that activates this lamp over here, which is the output. The early setting here is basically it affects the light level of these daylight sensors, which affects which time they will power up to what level. So for these numbers to be times at which the lights change, I have to have this being a skylight here. But if I wanted to use this system, I would actually have to have it be 2 levels lower. So I can block this one, and then the nearest skylight is out here. So this is why I've got this out here. So it blocks all the skylight, and it's centered on this daylight sensor just over here. All right, and then for this output here, it actually goes off when this one goes off, but it comes on when this one comes on, which is why I've got a bit of a circuit out here which is just I take a rising edge monostable circuit output from here, and that pushes the redstone across to activate the lamp, and then I take a falling edge monostable output from the next one, so when it goes off I get this piston pushing back and turning the lamp off. Obviously you don't have to use the lamp right here, you can just run a repeater out and then put your indicator lamp wherever you want it. Same with a lot of this. If you actually want to use this for in a trading hall, as is my plan, you don't need this huge array along here. You can just link up your redstone for the right distance and then either add one of these or this one. You can add the dual settings if you don't know which one you're going to prefer, which I probably will do when I put this into my survival world. But this along here is to just indicate where you can get to. So if, for example, I were to get rid of this grass block, you can see you get the full power coming up to here. So that's grass block, which is on top of, okay, so you'll see it flickered for a moment, and there you go, it's back up to full strength, even though it started raining. You see that this here, oh, it was thundering, not just raining, but it's still at full strength. This here is over the thunder sensor, effectively. So this is the one which activates when thunder's happening. And of course, this will give out a higher strength than these ones, which is why it gets taken in when all of them are actually feeding into this spot just here, because it's got a higher skylight level. Right, so I've now popped over to a different world where I can show you how to build the whole thing. So to start with, I've got space down here. You can see over there was where I was doing some of my testings, working out timings for all the daylight sensors, which I have a huge spreadsheet of, which I will probably link somewhere if you want to look at it and see exactly all the times, if anyone is interested in that. But while I'm working under here, I'm just going to give myself night vision. All right, so there we go. I've got night vision now. So here is going to be my nearest skylight. So I then want my first daylight sensor to be at skylight level 11. So this is 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. And I can check that on the F3 screen. Yeah. So that's effectively my thunder sensor. And then rain will have one space, and then there'll be two spaces to this one just here. And I've just realized I didn't give myself time. Right, there we go. Then we want to run these into, I need that to go all the way down. The pistons down there. And they need to be quite deep down because you don't want the piston getting bud powered by these here, which can happen if you have the piston only a couple of blocks down. So I'll just open this up so I can see what I'm doing down here. All right. And this is going to be where the nighttime sensor feeds in. Right, so I'm going to want to wire this up like this. Want that, and then that, and then just put redstone in between. And then this way, the power level of the daylight sensor will get pushed all the way to this point here. Right, and then your next sensor you need to put down for this is going to be out here. So this is going to be the inverted daylight sensor, and you're going to want to put a comparator output on that. And this is so we get the right distance. So you get 3 to here, and then 5 to there, and then just repeaters into these. And currently you can see it's lighting up, and that's because I actually need skylight above this. So that needs to be through there. So you should notice that this is just far enough that it doesn't affect the lighting of any of these. So this should still be 11, 9, and is this 6? Yeah, 6. And like I said, if you only want to use this as a weather independent daylight sensor, of course you can actually have your light source above this one here, but you'll need to make sure that your light source is closer to this one than these, so it steps down as it goes along here. All right, so effectively we've now got our weather independent daylight sensor output on this spot right here. So this will not depend upon weather at all, apart from that short brief period where it transitions from one weather state to another. If you want to do it the same as me and you want the two different settings, you're going to want another gap here. So this will be a permanent gap. And then on this one, you're going to want to put down this and this. So you can close up this light level, and then this can drop down to 9, 7, and 4. It's those distances which are why this needs to be out this far for this skylight access here. Otherwise you could move it a block inwards and then get rid of this comparator. So for now I'm going to leave this open, and having this extra hole out here isn't going to change the brightness levels, so I can just leave that there as well. From here I want to be taking this output. Right, so yeah, you're going to want your 6 pieces of redstone here. And then this is where you're going to want to take your repeater outputs. So last time I did it facing that way. Of course, you can do it this way if you prefer, depending where you actually want your output to end up. So this time I'm going to do it this way. So you want your repeaters coming out here, and then you want to turn them into the first one here on the 5th one. You want it to be a rising edge monostable circuit. So you put that in there and a block on top. And then this one you want to be a falling edge monostable. So you want to put this one here and then run that into a sticky piston with a block above it. So when this goes off, that'll activate, that'll go through, you get a 1-tick pulse. And they can both point directly onto this piece of redstone here, where you can take your output. So if you want to have it so it just switches, you can have this tick a sticky piston, because these will be 1-tick pulses. So you can have your redstone block there and have it shift across and get spat out by the piston at one point and then retracted the next time. But I find that this is more likely to become inverted if the rain starts or stops during the time that these are lit up or unlighting and giving a sort of false reading here. So instead of doing it this way, you can do it so that these are just shifting to normal pistons back across, and I failed to pick that up. There we go. One way or the other. So I want redstone block there. That's where I want. Oh, let's get that in there. Right. So then your redstone block, you're going to want to take that, put that there, and then your reading is going to be coming out of here. For the other setting, for the late setting, so this will mean you get your signals just after 2000 and just after 9000, you need to take a reading out of here, and that will basically effectively activate at the right time and then go off at the right time, which is much simpler than this one, but I personally think it's going to be more useful to have this one in use, because I'd like to know slightly before things change. So you can look at your clock and see, okay, so it hasn't passed that time yet. I can click into a trade and do the trade and not worry that it's literally about to cut off as you turn away from the clock and into the trade. So yeah, that's why I prefer this one, even though that this way is much simpler. So I can then just run these outputs up torch towers. If you're using both of them, then you could do the same with both. If you'd rather have a piston push a block with a redstone block on top or something like that, that'll work as well. But you need to make sure there's no skylight coming in, particularly if you've got this one here, because it's very close to here. And the skylight for these ones, it's very important that they stay exactly the same. And then for this one, of course, it's 15 anyway, so you can't increase the skylight for that by putting holes in. So this one you could just feed up through a redstone line if you wanted, but redstone torch tower seems much neater. And then on the upside, you can just have your redstone torch feed into a lantern. So at the moment, I've got it on the early setting, which is this reading over here. On the late setting, which is this one, you can see it's still on because it's still giving that reading, because it's still during the correct hours. I think it's probably about 6,000 right now because it's about noon. If I switch this back to this, I don't know, switching it back and forth. Okay, it managed to cope with that. You can sometimes get an issue with this version if it switches weather during the time that it's also changing, but it will reset the next day if it does get out of sync anyway. So it's not an issue. It's an issue which solves itself if it becomes an issue. So if I set the time to 1600, okay, so this is off, and in a few moments this is going to come on because the time will start. There you go, and I can query the time, and it's not quite 2000 yet because, like I said, this is the early system, so it gives you warning. So you could even link this up to some note blocks and have it ding in your base or somewhere like that if you wanted it to give you warning to run across to your trading hall or to wherever your villagers are. You can see now it's in the 2000 range. And then if I keep going up, I want to go to, to make sure it's a command. And now I can't spell. There we go. Do this. Still, it's still on. So I've not jumped over the boundary where it turns off. And keep standing around here. Eventually you'll see this switches off. Okay, you see it just turned off there, and we're almost at 9,000. You can see it goes very slightly early. And this one needs to be ignored while you're using the early setting for this. Then as a quick demonstration that this setting is working, if I switch it to my late mode, okay, switching it and then seeing it go off isn't the best example because you're not quite sure what's happened. So let's just go to that. You see it's still off, and if we give it a moment, and there we go, it came on. It's a little bit on the later side than I would have liked, but it's the time that you get from the position of the sun. So yeah, it's a little bit after time started. And then if I set the time to 9,000, which is the end of the villager's working time, you should see in a moment that this light goes off. There we go. And there you go. It's a demonstration of both of them working. independent of the weather, as the entire system is independent of weather, providing it doesn't change in the few cases while this is trying to switch as well. So if you have any questions or feedback, please leave them in the comments and I'll try and reply to everyone. I've been Recoded Zaphod, and thanks for watching.